Hey. Wanted to pop in real quick. I'm waiting in line for gas at one of these big warehouse stores. And you know how those lines get, they take forever. It's Whiskey Wisdom Wednesday, but it might actually turn into Thirsty Thursday post because I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have time to upload. I don't know if I'm going to have time to kind of put it together. I know it's going to come in pieces because I know the line's going to get moving. But I want to pop in real quick, and talk about Canadian whiskey. Like, what is it? A lot of people don't really know or really understand what Canadian whiskey is. What's that shadow from? That's crazy, right? Oh, there we go. So, basically, Canadian whiskey, let's talk about the basis of it first. Basically, Canadian whiskey, like a bourbon, is distilled at a higher proof, at like 180 proof. And then, so it's distilled at 180 proof. And what they do is then they add, and the 180 proof gives it a blah, like neutral taste, you know? And then what they do is they add a bunch of smaller, they blend it with a bunch of smaller, lower proof whiskeys. And that tends to bring it down and give you your kind of watered down flavoring of it, the watered down taste of it. Now, the interesting thing about Canadian whiskey is, by law, they're allowed 9.09% of anything else. So they can add rum, they can add vodka, they can add caramel, they can add chocolate, they can add whatever they want. So basically, that's where they're getting the flavors from in the Canadian whiskey. As opposed to allowing the barrel to age it and allowing the barrel to give the flavors, they're adding the flavors based on that. That's where they're getting the flavors from everything else. So Canadian whiskey, a lot of people don't really care for the taste of it, and that's pretty much why, because they don't really understand that it's a whiskey because it's distilled like a whiskey is, but the problem is that they're getting the flavors from a bunch of different ingredient components as opposed to just the barrel flavor where it comes out of the still into the barrel. It's coming out of the still, they're blending it with, 4, 5, 6, 7 other lower proof whiskeys, and then they're adding all this other stuff into it. Guys, line's moving. See you in a minute. Once it's all said and done, the Canadian whiskey, after all that crap and junk is added, they bottle it at about 80 proof. So if it has all that stuff in it and it tastes horrible, which I don't, most like real whiskey drinkers I know don't really care for whiskey. I'm one of them. I don't really care for, or most whiskey drinkers I know of don't care for Canadian whiskey. I, for one, am one of them. I don't really care for Canadian whiskey. I think it tastes like crap. So how did it become so popular, and where did it gain its prominence? Well, that's a good question. The prominence of the Canadian whiskey actually came during Prohibition, when the states banned the selling and making of alcohol. Canada, since it wasn't part of the United States, was actually still able to produce and sell. So the bootleggers would run up to Canada. They would smuggle the Canadian whiskey back across the states, and they would feed the whiskey-starved nation of the United States during Prohibition. That's how they made a ton of their money. Other than the shiners and stuff that did it on their own farms and whatnot. Anyway, so once the Prohibition ended, major distilleries had an overabundance of their Canadian whiskey that they were selling because that's the only place you could get it. They began selling, and once these distilleries opened in the States, they began selling their product into the United States. They began selling their product to the United States, which contributed to the huge Canadian whiskey boom of like the mid 20th century. I'm going to go ahead. That's pretty much what I got, but I'm going to close on this last few little fun factoids. One, Canadian whiskey is actually considered a rye, but not like the American rye that we know that's popular now, but it's actually considered a rye. So if you ever watch Mad Men, the dude on there, I think his name was Don Dapper or Don Draper, whatever. When he ordered a rye, he was actually ordering a Canadian whiskey on the rocks. Anyway, that's all I got for your Whiskey Wisdom Wednesday, Thursday post. Anyway, that's it. I appreciate you guys liking this. I appreciate you guys sharing this. I appreciate all you guys do for me. If we could draw some more people in, let's get them to like my page. Let's get to provide some more value to people. It'd be great. I appreciate everything you do. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll see you next time.